Hey, welcome back to another Just 15 Mins. Yet another automation platform. Um, I'll stop doing these soon, I promise. But this one, first of all I thought, it looks like Pipedream. In my last video, we had a look at Pipedream and something called String, which is actually Pipedream, but they've built on top a full AI automated workflow process. Um, I'm still, I, like I mentioned in the last video, I'm still a fan of NA10. I think it's got a lot more flexibility, but apart from the very simple things, it can get a little bit complex for if you're not. I was going to say everybody's technical these days, but what I mean is if you're not from a development background or even understanding, like I mentioned in the last video, what is JSON, what is Node.js, what is JavaScript. Now, all those things, a lot of people will probably know, but how many people would be comfortable dropping into that sort of stuff? So that's where Pipedream and certainly String, which is, like I say, I think it's like a superset. It's like a layer on top of Pipedream, and Pipedream's been around for a long time, really. And so why yet another one? Well, this one's Lindy AI, basically. And at first I thought, hang on a minute, this looks surprisingly like Pipedream. It's sort of like NA10 as well, but the look and feel is very close to, I think, Pipedream, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. Not having a go at them. I mean, it's what works, isn't it? Everything gets copied at some point. But I was I sort of thought, oh, well, it's just another one, ignore it. But I had a quick look, and there's a couple of subtle things that uh, are maybe interesting. And again, this is really, as I sort of think, really think is, it's along the lines of Zapier. Okay, so even though you can do a bit more complex stuff, it's sort of in that realm. So instead of things like NA10 and a few of the other automation platforms that might need you to have a bit more technical knowledge, this is more along those lines, like I said, Zapier. And it's pretty interesting, and I'll show you why in a second. The pricing is quite interesting because they do have a free version, as you can see. 400 credits per month, obviously, and I'll explain why you've got this 1 million character knowledge base, etc. But it's free to start with, at least. But then you go up to a pro version, and it starts to get, I suppose, a little bit more expensive. I haven't done a full analysis on the pricing compared to, say, Pipedream, String, NA10, Make, Zapier. I haven't had a chance to do that. But, you can sort of see, you can, so a task, when they talk about tasks, by the way, is not how many processes there are, but how many actual iterations that run, instances, if you like, that have run. So you get 400 a month for the free version, which probably is enough for most people. But obviously you can go a little bit further. And it's one of the main things why this one jumped out is the simplicity of getting started, for one, and also it's sort of integrated with the AI platforms. So unlike some of them, like String, which is Pipedream, NA10, things like that, and I think even Make, not sure about Zapier, but all of those ones you can plug in your own sort of API for OpenAI, Gemini, Claude, whatever it might be. So you're essentially using those other platforms yourself, whereas these platforms basically are inherently linked to those platforms, and you can choose between them, as you'll see in a second. So the pricing isn't too bad. I've got a feeling it could get a little bit pricey, but 49, it depends what you're doing, isn't it, really? $49 a month maybe isn't a lot if you're doing things like knowledge base, which, essentially, I haven't even tried that yet, but I understand what that is, given some previous work with NA10 and other platforms, where you can actually link that to Google Drive, SharePoint, OneDrive, or even just your file system to have like knowledge base articles. So it could be instruction guides, it could be whatever, white papers, whatever it might be. And of course, you can only get 1 million characters, which sounds a lot, but 1 million characters doesn't go that far, does it? But you've got 20 million on this plan, and obviously it seems to stay the same on the business plan. But that's good because that's the RAG, retrieve augmented generation aspect. So in other words, you could have Telegram or WhatsApp and people asking about something, about your business, about your returns policy. I don't know. I'm just using all the usuals. But, whether it's WhatsApp or Telegram or coming from an email or whatever it is, it can go and check that knowledge base, which is your articles, and go and hopefully construct a decent response back to the user, the customer. So that's what the knowledge base is. So it's got a lot of that built into it. It's got things like phone call stuff integrated as well. So yeah, I mean, they've taken it one step further for the integration aspect, and certainly the AI side of things, which I'll show you in a second. By the way, just very quickly, they've got tons of integrations that you'd expect. I'm not going to go through all of them. There's way too many. Funny enough, again, there are some CRMs, things like Salesforce and HubSpot and a few others in there. There doesn't tend to be a lot of these things where there's ERP or accounting systems for interestingly good reasons, because there's a bit more complexity involved in that, I believe. So, but anyway, there's a lot of marketing stuff, in there. There's a lot of sales stuff. Now, like I said, they've got a lot of interesting integrations for sure. There's no doubt about it. But the other thing is the personal assistant, where you can integrate with Alexa and obviously Google Calendar, Outlook Calendar, a few other things like that. So there's loads to go and have a look at. I don't know how many. I think there is a limit on the pricing. Somewhere in the information, I think it mentioned there is there's so many integrations in the free version, and you get 1,000 plus in the pro and business version. So interesting to sort of keep in mind. Anyway, let's jump in, and I'll show you what I've created as a very basic they call them Lindies, so a process is called a Lindy, just out of interest. And interestingly, when I signed up, and this is where this relates to all of these SaaS systems, platforms, AI platforms, automation platforms, when you're connecting into things like, I'm using Telegram, so it's using a Telegram sort of bot that I've created. But obviously, if it's going to connect to things like your Google Calendar, Google Drive, Outlook Calendar, you've got to trust it, because it's going to access that data, isn't it? But this is what happens in a lot of these systems anyway. But it's just something to be aware of course. Okay. But one thing I liked about Lindy was when I signed up, I signed up with a Google account, and it prompted me and said, well, do you want to access your Google Calendar, your Gmail, Google Drive? And you can control a bit more fine-grained detail of that. But again, it's your choice. You've got to be able to make these decisions yourself on what you want these things to access or not. But anyway, the good side, the good side, it was the good thing about it was the fact that all of that calendar access to Google, for instance, and Google Drive and all those sorts of things was done without, I didn't have to go off to a, get an access token or some sort of API key. It just sort of gave me a prompt, said, what do you want to access? And voila, it did it. Same thing with Telegram. I just picked Telegram because, well, I just wanted one way. I could have picked an email client like Gmail or Outlook there, by the way. But I just wanted to use something like WhatsApp or Telegram. Telegram tends to be a little bit easier to set up because WhatsApp, you need things like a business account and all that sort of stuff to connect to. Not difficult, but a bit more time consuming and all that sort of stuff. Okay. So the idea is, I thought, let me see how fast I can build something that's reasonably easy to look at, given working with NA10 and of course Pipedream, String, Make.com and Zapier over the last X number of years and goodness knows what. Okay, so I started with a completely fresh Lindy, if that's what they're going to call them. Yeah, when you create a new Lindy, by the way, you do get options to build from templates. They've got a lot of templates, but I wanted to build from scratch. Okay, so I started with when you get a blank Lindy, it usually says, well, you're going to have a trigger of some sort. Okay, so the trigger could be, like I said, a schedule, an event from Telegram or from an email or from a file system or a row on a Google sheet, anything like that. There's loads of different triggers that they've got. Okay, so I picked Telegram. Now, when I clicked Telegram, I had to create a Telegram bot. Not difficult. If you can follow the instructions. It's got some really clear instructions about how you do this. But if you let me know in the comments if you need it, it's not difficult. But I'm happy to put the steps there that you can actually create your own bot. And that bot, basically, you name it. Ironically, my bot is called David NA10 because I was using it with NA10 as some demos. But ultimately, it'll give you a token, just a string of like a, what looks to be random text, but that's the connection to your bot. Okay, now that was probably the most complex bit I had to do. It didn't take long at all. Okay, then I connected it because obviously when you add a step, by the way, you can move all these things around and usual sort of thing. It's got a lot of interesting things. So for instance, let me just show you about the condition. So instead of you doing if then else and knowing all this logic and whatever, this is where I mentioned at the start really that it's got some subtle interesting things that you that are a bit different to things like NA10, Pipedream, String and all that sort of stuff, is that you provide like a natural language that the AI is going to say about the go down this path if, and you can start to give it just English sort of instructions about the condition, which I think is really quite interesting actually. Okay, I haven't played with it too much, I'll be absolutely honest, but this is just a first look. But what I ended up doing is when I added an action, you've got, there's the search the knowledge base, which is really interesting because you can, like I say, have your own documents or things like user guides or whatever it might be in Google Drive, OneDrive, SharePoint, whatever it might be, or even upload them from your local system. And that's actually a really powerful thing. You can see there, you've got a few areas where you can pull this stuff in, okay, including Notion, which is quite a useful one. But it cannot look at, like I say, local files, just text, but websites as well as all the usual sort of candidates for files. Okay, so I'm going to leave that alone as well. But you've got a lot of stuff there. Yeah, there's looping. There's the AI agent, which is this one, which I'll come to in a second. But you do have like perform an action, and this is where you've got absolutely everything that you can think of from all the usual bits. You know, you can call random sort of not random, but websites or HTTP requests. You can call all the usual sort of apps. It's got AI to try to work out a lot of it. It's also got scrapers, which is quite interesting. That will actually go and look at, you know, websites and grab information off them to use in your flows as well. But anyway, there is a lot of stuff to have a little play with. Let me just take that one off again. But what I added here was the AI agent. So all I did, and this is where it's quite subtle, the model, so all the AI platforms and models are sort of built in, and that's why I'm on a trial version. I've got 5,000 credits, which I think a credit refers to each time a task is run, an instance is run. Okay, so you might need to check out that, but essentially you've got all the different, you know, the usual sort of state. It's got all the Claude models, GPT, Gemini's, Claude 4 Opus actually. I think I might use Telegram to say, go and write me some code to do this. You know, I don't know. There's so many silly things that you can do, and silly being the operative word in most cases. So you've got a lot of these ones. Now, I don't think I saw Grok or anything in there, but you've certainly got all the ChatGPT type stuff, Gemini and Claude and things like that. So I'm using the default, which is just Claude 4 Sonnet, which is actually really good. It's a very good confirmation. Confirmation. I was reading the word below. A very good model. But you can have something where there's a confirmation about, you know, what skills it should sort of get access to. So what I've done is, look, you know, I've said, please check my calendar, and it knows my calendar because I've already, when I signed up, it's already set that up. Now, you can actually be very specific and pick like an Outlook calendar, Google Calendar, whatever it is that you want. Okay. And I've said, look, please, from the Telegram message, please respond with calendar title. You know, so I'm going to say, have I got any doctor's appointments this week, or what's on my calendar this coming week, that type of thing. Okay. So it's using that prompt to go through, but then that's where you can add skills. Okay, so that's where I've linked up my Google Calendar. I could link up an Outlook calendar. I could link up, there's a lot of other different skills in here. Again, you end up with this sort of apps flow where I could look up HubSpot, Salesforce, Outlook, Gmail, Slack, you know, you name it. It's got a lot of stuff in here, including the knowledge base again. Okay, but I've done that with Google Calendar, and the only other skill, I could have added another step, but I thought, why bother? It will then respond basically back to the Telegram message. Now, interesting, in a lot of those other systems, N8N, Pipedream, all those ones again, you sort of have to link that up to the AI agent to get the response, and that's where you need to know a bit of JSON data structures and things like that. It's not complex, but you do have to do some extra steps, and this was very simple, where it knows that I've already sent in Telegram, so it's going to send a reply back to that very same Telegram. Okay, so anyway, let's give this a run. I'm going to save this just as it is. Okay, and I'm going to look at the task now. I'll just share my I've got Telegram desktop, and you can see I've already tried this as well. So I had a question here. Let me just repeat it. It'll be a little bit easier to do that. Okay, so I'm going to fire in a request from my Telegram. Okay. Yeah, and it's going to be running through the process. Now, in the background, the task is going to be running. You can flick to a task view. Yep, and I can see it's observing the Telegram, it's checking some events, things like that. Yep, and there we go. It's sent back and it tells you what it's done as well. Okay, so if I ever look at my Telegram, there we go. No doctor appointments found in your calendar for this coming week. Okay. I did ask another one, can you tell me the first 5 meetings of the coming week? And it did, gave me the dates, all that type of stuff. But you can obviously, this is really basic, but you can start to see how you can really link this up and say, go and send an email to someone to say, I need a meeting about this, that, and the other. But there's so many more things rather than all of those usual things that you can actually do. But like I said, it's very much a look and feel like Pipedream, but there are some subtle differences that it's already got a lot of the AI models already built in. And things like when you want to write, like I said, a condition or a loop or anything like that, it gives you AI to be able to describe what you want to do with that. So I think there's some subtle things that is quite interesting. Now, again, if you watch the previous video that I did with Pipedream and String, which is the Pipedream sort of overlay with all just, basically create your AI automation using just pure natural text, then the idea is that is got a lot of similarities to this. But as I say, where I found this interesting is that it seems to be, less friction to actually get started to work with this. So anyway, that's what I've got. It's well over 15 minutes as usual. Why do I call it 15 minutes? But anyway, hopefully it could have been quite useful for you just to at least compare to those other platforms. Like I said, it's in the category of the Zapier sort of area from my perspective, which is no bad thing. It allows a lot of maybe non-technical people to really do some interesting stuff. So anyway, have a good day, a good week, wherever you are, and I will catch you on the next one.